Hello and welcome back to In Stitches. I'm back with the Bernina 117L and I've got some good news. It's running perfectly now. Well, I haven't put it back together yet. I've just, it's what I mean by running perfectly, I mean it's turning over perfectly, nice and freely. I'll explain to you what I did. And I've got a commenter to thank for sort of jogging my memory, if you know what I mean. I'll explain that in a minute. Running very nicely there. Thank you very much to all of those that did comment. I had some suggestions that, you know, it'll definitely be thread caught around the hook shaft here. And I think it was fairly obvious on the previous video, I think about 9 minutes and 30 seconds in, somewhere around there, that there was no thread caught around the hook here. I mean, I've been doing this since 1986. Sorry I didn't mention it in the video, but that is one of the first things to check, is thread caught around. It didn't really come into my mind because I didn't see any thread caught around the hook there. It's, you know, really something that you'll see. It'll really hit you in the face. If there's thread caught around the hook there, you'll see it quite easily. But thanks very much for the suggestions. There are other suggestions as well that, you know, all it'll need is penetrating oil. I thought, you know, I showed it fairly clearly that that's what I was doing, was putting penetrating oil into the machine. I left it for, I think it was 2 nights, just soaking away, or 2 days actually, you know, in a conservatory in the sun. It was fairly warm in there, and it didn't improve at all. In fact, you know, if anything, it probably got tighter. And so thank you very much to Martin Stock. You are the winner in the comments for the what actually was causing the problem. And I did reply to say that I've checked all the backlash on the gears. I'll explain to you what gear backlash is in a second. I checked the backlash on the top here, the top gears, and I checked, just tip it on the back there. I checked the backlash on this gear set here. But what I hadn't checked is the backlash on this gear set here. So thank you very much, Martin. Yes, and sorry for you know, saying that I'd already done it. I had partially done it. I'd done 2/3 of it, and it just happened to be the one I hadn't checked. But anyway, I'll just explain to the people who don't know what gear backlash is. I'll get you in really close here if I can. So gear backlash is where you have a certain amount of play between the 2 gears. You don't want these 2 gears pressing at this point here where they join. You don't want them pressing really, really tightly together. Otherwise, it will cause noise, it'll cause wear, you know, friction, heat, you know, all sorts of issues there. You want to have just a very fine amount of clearance there, and you can see that there when I move this gear here. There's this very, very fine amount of clearance there. So that's what they call gear backlash. So that, and of course, you don't want it to be too much backlash either. People had suggested also that, oh, just remove the lower shaft. Yeah, I mean, I could remove the lower shaft, but who's to say that it's not this shaft here that's causing the problem? And, you know, just remove the lower shaft. There's a little bit of work involved in that. My customer, she bought this machine secondhand. I talked to her about it, and she didn't really want to spend too much money on the machine. I told her what state I had it to, you know, where I could turn the machine, but only just. It wouldn't work under power. And she was quite happy to just have the machine as a display piece. So that's why I left the video where I did. Now, you know, the suggestion to say pull the main shaft, the bottom shaft out, yeah, that's all well and good, but, you know, the time involved. I really, really wanted to get this machine up and running, and I wanted to put it on YouTube for you guys to see. But as I say, you know, there's time involved in that. And of course, when you're filming a video, there's a whole lot more time involved, not just to do the job, but to actually do the filming and the editing and all that. So, you know, there's a good amount of time. I sort of thought, oh, I wonder if I could crowdfund it. I'm not quite sure how I would go about that. And then I thought, oh, well, I'll give my patrons a treat and, you know, give them an exclusive video. So that's what I did this morning. So my thought pattern for my Patreon video was to go through and loosen this gear here for a start, and if it was a backlash issue like Martin had suggested on this one here, and it did seem fairly tight, it's just that I couldn't really tell how tight it was, or there certainly wasn't any backlash, and that was a bit of a red flag there. And so my thought was, if I loosen these two screws here, and if it is a backlash or a lack of clearance issue, that might sort it out. And if it turned out that it wasn't a backlash or a clearance issue, and these two screws that hold this gear onto the shaft were loose, then this gear here could turn freely on the shaft. That way I could eliminate whether it was this shaft here that was binding, or whether it was the shaft here. If the machine was still tight, well then I know it was either one of these two bearings here on this shaft here. If the machine freed up, well then I would know, because this gear is no longer being driven, then I would know that it would be somewhere on this shaft, so either this bearing or that bearing there. This was the only one that I hadn't checked the backlash on. And so what I think had happened at some stage, I'm not sure how, whether the machine has been tampered with or not, I don't know, but this gear here was binding. The machine was seizing anyway, I know that for sure. It was locked tight. You saw in the previous video it was locked tight. Just working on the potentially some of these seized bearings, I would say probably this bearing here, down here, might have been seized because the oil point for it is sort of hidden. And so I think there were two problems. I think possibly this bearing here was seizing, and I think that this here was binding too tightly, or I know for sure now that it was binding too tightly here. So whether someone had, just incorrectly set the machine, or whether it's, I don't know what else it could be, I guess. I'm not quite sure, but you can see here we've got a little bit of backlash here, a little bit there now. But when I release these two screws here, I think this gear just moved ever so slightly to the right to provide the correct amount of clearance there. And it's as free now. As you saw before, it's running nicely. So yeah, I thought I'd do a quick catch-up video there for you. I'll just give you another quick final run there. Going very nicely. I won't go through assembling the machine. It's fairly straightforward. It's basically just the reverse procedure of, the assembly, just putting these covers back on and things like that. This is my one up the back here. I'll look at doing a video just on the basic runnings of that machine there. So keep an eye out for that one. So that's pretty much it for this one today. Thanks very much for watching. Thank you for the comments. Most of them were pretty helpful. Some of them were fairly presumptuous, and I guess that comes with the territory. But yeah, thanks anyway. Special thanks to Martin again, just for jogging my memory there.